I think the generalist will win over specialist in the age that we are living today because of evolution of technology and AI. A lot of specialist roles will become sort of redundant with AI taking over, and we can see some examples of it in our own function today. And today it doesn't take so much time for us to generate 10 different image options for a LinkedIn post today, because I just go to Midjourney and say, this is the prompt we have, this is the brand guidelines, this is the kind of visuals we have. We're able to get that. It used to take a longer time earlier. But then the question is, for a creative designer is, how to use Midjourney as a tool and sort of amplify the time to creative for the marketing team. In an enterprise software cycle, the way I define marketing is, or the customer experience is, the sum total of experiences you had every time you had interacted with anyone and everything around Pando, right? And it's your entire journey. And in that entire journey, marketing is just one part of the journey, right? It's like you said, how's your experience when you had joined the first call, when the sales presented the first pitch deck to you, right? How was your experience when you went through a value discovery session followed by a demo of the solution, right? Or you became a customer, how was the kickoff call by your customer success team? How are the interactions? So every email that you send to the customer is marketing, right? Every time you click on your software and you try to get things done, and what it shows there is marketing. So fundamentally, if you look at the context of Pando, we are targeting specific enterprises with revenue greater than 1 billion and from specific industries where we believe we have product market fit. So this could be automotive, this could be consumer goods, etc., etc. And from that perspective, the TAM is a finite set of about, let's say, 5,000 plus accounts. So anything and everything that we do, we live and die with these accounts. So it's a very clear, targeted account-based marketing in terms of a go-to-market strategy. Right? Even if you're a HR manager, even if you're an IT manager, the roles have evolved. So I think it sort of dawned on me that if you don't evolve, you become disrupted. So we all went through the SaaS wave of adopting different software. We used to do things manually, and I think it's natural that you have to sort of go through the AI wave. On a related note, we are in the business of offering AI agents for logistics, and it is important that we practice what we preach in every other function. So if you're selling AI agents, it's important that how do I look at AI agents for marketing was very critical mandate for me as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Jaideep. Welcome back to the Marketing Couch, where I talk to some of the sharpest minds in marketing, sales, and product and unpack their practical and battle tested playbooks and toolkits. My guest today is someone who built a global brand from India, scaled a marketing team to driving 70% of the sales pipeline, and achieved something most companies never do in their first year. The company debuted in Gartner's Magic Quadrant as a visionary in their first year. Meet Prakash Ramnath. Prakash is the Vice President of Global Marketing at Pando, where he has helped transform a SaaS startup into an AI powered logistics platform serving many Fortune 500 companies. Pando operates in the transportation management system space, a category that's literally the lifeline of global trade. With supply chain disruptions becoming the norm, from tariffs to geopolitical tensions, this technology has never been more critical for enterprises managing billions in revenue. But here is what makes this conversation really special. Prakash started in door to door sales, and then he moved to product management, and then he discovered digital marketing when Google AdWords was just a kid on the block. We spoke about his account based marketing playbook for enterprise sales, how to build strategic partnerships that actually drive revenue. And we also spoke about why brand differentiation matters more than ever in crowded SaaS markets today. We also spoke about his framework for scaling marketing teams in the AI era. And finally, we also spoke about why generalist marketers will win over specialists in the coming days. If you are building a B2B brand or scaling marketing operations globally, this conversation is definitely going to help you. You can utilize some of the frameworks and learning and implement that right away. With that, I bring you Prakash Ramnath. Hey Prakash, welcome to the Marketing Couch.
Hey Jaydeep, thanks for having me here. I'm glad we're finally doing this. Look forward to the conversations.
Glad that really we are finally doing it. It's, I think, after almost a month or so back and forth, right?
Yep.
But so
Yep.
glad to have you on the show today. So, Prakash, let's get started right away. I wanted to start with what is the work that you are most proud of at Pando, where you currently heads the global marketing in last 4 years of work.
Hey, I think happy to sort of walk you into that. But before that, I thought it'll be good to introduce Pando to the audience here. We are into logistics tech. We are into freight management. We've been in the business for about 7+ years. We started off as a SaaS startup and now sort of going through an interesting journey of transitioning into AI agents for logistics. Of course, we have already customers across large enterprises and multinationals. We help manufacturers and retailers to sort of manage their entire end to end freight, which is basically either you are buying raw materials from your suppliers across the globe through which travels through a ship or a plane, or sourcing from local suppliers on road, or you're distributing your finished products across your, again, a plane, a ship, or train, or wherever it is, to ensure that it reaches your end customers on time. So essentially, we've been in the space for 7+ years, and it's been an exciting journey. I joined about 4 years back, and one of those early marketers. When the as a company, we were going through this phase of establishing a product market fit, building the product. And I think it was an interesting time to sort of have a marketing focus in trying to both build the brand globally as well as drive a predictable demand generation motion at Pando. Looking back, I think just the sheer experience of building a marketing team ground up across different functions within marketing, building a global brand from India to the world, expanding across Middle East and US now, has been fascinating. There are many milestones across the journey, but I think one of the good validation of our market recognition came through Gartner, where we made our debut in their Magic Quadrant as a visionary in our first year. And in my experience, very few vendors have directly gone to a visionary in a Gartner, and that was a great validation and recognition from the market when you compete with the likes of Oracle, SAP, Manhattan, the big boys in the world of enterprise software. But it's been a fascinating journey, and happy to sort of unfold many layers into it as we talk through it, JD. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think couldn't be a better validation of your work. I haven't really heard of any company so far just on debut straight away into visionary in Gartner. But congratulations, first of all, on that. And was that for PI agents?
Yeah, so that's for the our entire offering around transportation management, and one of the way we differentiate in the market is offering it through an agentic AI. We call it Pi, like you said, PI. So I think it's Pi is a unique mathematical coefficient which draws parallel to both algorithmic machine learning capabilities, but also has huge significance in how you can relate to human as a machinery functions. So we thought Pi could be probably the best way to sort of describe an AI agent which can have drive the human machine collaboration. So that's a brand mascot for our AI agent in the market.
Very timely move. You spoke about you joined at a time in the company where company was kind of still settling down with the PMF. How long you think as a company it took for Pando to achieve that PMF when you realized that okay, now we actually have achieved PMF?
Yeah, so PMF is an interesting journey, and I think you need to achieve PMF for every market that you operate in.
Mhm.
Pando started in India, had already had customers like Godrej, Britannia, who've been using Pando when I joined, and to some extent, yes, we had a very clear PMF when India was concerned. But moment you sort of looked at US as a market, or looked at Middle East as a market, or Europe as a market, the dynamics of the freight ecosystem, the logistics ecosystem that you operate are very different, and the solution vendor landscape and the competition are very different as well. So US, for example, is a very evolved market. They already have some solution or the other, and you were looking at a replacement market. India, on the other hand, when we started off, was a blue ocean, right?
Mm,
People were doing things manually, and you had to sort of
mm,
educate on
mm,
investing in a system. So that
mm.
becomes relative, and the way you need to sort of adapt the narrative and the go to market strategy will be different for both the markets. Having said that, I think if you have achieved PMF in one market, it gives you confidence in trying to sort of have those customer validation and use cases, and just the sheer advocacy of those customers help you drive acquisition on other markets as well. So a lot of multinationals that we got here as customers, for example, in India, really helped us to sort of build and grow in US as a market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Considering US, as you mentioned, would be a highly mature market, so it would be more of dethroning an incumbent and
Absolutely.
getting into that spot. I can only imagine how tough that would be across any categories, but particularly in a category which is US thrives on. I mean, basically, their global trade probably is the number one, and
Huge.
there is so much of talk anywhere about in the recent times of whatever right or wrong reasons. But it's an important area, and I think TMS as a category is almost like a lifeline of global trade.
It
um,
is.
and from that angle, this is obviously very critical to nations like US or any other developed nations. But interestingly, you mentioned in India, on the other hand, there was a lot of market development work that probably was required for you to sort of build that momentum, build that, get first few customers onboarded and so on. So can you take me to the backstory a little bit about how did this idea originate for Pando? Why TMC? Is there anything that you can highlight?
I think all credit to our founders, who had the vision to sort of solve for it. Interestingly, the backstory also relates to why it's called Pando. So the story behind the name is, we all grew up thinking that and learning that a blue whale is the largest organism that we know of, until a set of researchers found in 1977 that there is a huge spread of quaking aspen forest in Utah. It's called Pando, and they realized the entire forest is basically one tree. It's all offshoots from a single root system, and it's like an inverted banyan tree. So the entire forest is essentially one species, and Pando became the largest organism, rewriting everything that we knew about across the books. I think their vision was, when they looked at logistics, they realized that the logistics across the world is broken. People were using things manually. People were using siloed systems. The data was spread across, and Pando was born out of this vision to be build that single root system for logistics globally. And we wanted to be that networked root system where manufacturers, distributors, retailers are able to seamlessly procure, source, manufacture, distribute across globally as well. So that's the story behind Pando, and I think all credit to the founders to believe in the vision. They went through an interesting road journey, I'm told, visiting each manufacturers, retailers, trying to understand how does the process work, and then come back and see what is that they can build to sort of help them make it better. So that's an interesting story around Pando.
What a fantastic story, truly! And thanks for sharing the really the background of the vision and where the name came from and the metaphor. I mean, it is so powerful, without a doubt. So, as a brand, what is that you think is your core strength is currently in that category?
No, so obviously we want to sort of double dive on the vision. We want to be a single root system that can unify that. Interesting thing about Pando as the forest was, nobody sort of seeds the forest, right? It sort of autonomously sort of expands on itself from its own offshoots. And I
Organically,
think
yeah.
when we looked at organically as well, asynchronously as well in some form. And I think this was also very relevant in the context of our transition from SaaS to AI as well ability to drive autonomous logistics. And the reason we felt it is important is if you speak to any logistics teams or managers across the globe, burnout is a big issue. Logistics is one area where there is disruption every day. You know what's happening with tariffs around the globe today, and logistics teams are trying to figure out how to make things work. But even before tariff, there was COVID, there was Red Sea crisis, there was the Ukraine war, and it's one after another. And I think it is inevitable that how automation and AI sort of can help them bring a lot more balance in their lives, and sort of let the heavy lift of doing a lot of repetitive but little critical work. You need to still plan things to be sent out every day. Can it be done by AI? So sort of the brand relevance, even in terms of AI and autonomous, was actually very evident with Pando, and we thought we'll build on that. But essentially, having the ecosystem thrive, it's not just the enterprises, but also their suppliers, their distributors, the carriers that we work with, is what our vision and objective is. See how to sort of leverage AI and AI agents to sort of help them make better, so that they can focus more of their time on strategic priorities rather than getting burned out.
So clearly, there is a lot of nuances that involve. I mean, I think usually for outsiders, this is not immediately visible. Some of these global events, be it natural events or political events, war that have so much of bearings, especially in this particular area, which is the lifeline of global trade. As a marketer, what do you think is your biggest challenge today, both as a brand in this category and also as a representative of this category? So both from an industry standpoint, also as an individual brand.
I think the fundamental challenge for any marketer in any category is to sort of drive a positioning and messaging that stands out. You have a unique value as a brand that you stand for, and that has to resonate with your audience. And that's been true ever since time immemorial, and that's true even today when there is so much noise around. And probably especially the enterprise SaaS as a category that we focus on, or SaaS as such, is become so crowded. And I kind of relate to 10-15 years back when I sort of looked at the B2C industry, whether it is consumer goods, whether it is electronics, and all that. Everybody realized that beyond the basic product differentiation, it's only the brand differentiation that drove the sales, right? To some extent, most of the products were commoditized, and that's why brand meant a lot. You chose a Coke versus Pepsi because you believed in certain brand elements and values that appeal to you. I think even in the enterprise software space, we are probably at the cusp of that moment, at that tipping
Mhm.
point. Used to say, hey, software selling doesn't work like that. It's solution selling. There is no brand differentiation. It is more rational versus emotional. I think we are at that stage where you need to have a unique set of values that you associate with brand. And why you want to choose a Microsoft versus AWS today, or a Google today, also has a lot to do with them as being brands. And I think that sort of percolates to that. So from that perspective, I think the biggest challenge is how do you sort of build a brand promise at this stage in a category which is getting commoditized in
Mhm.
some form or the other. It's not just you talking about AI, it's about everyone talking about AI.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways that we are trying to do that is sort of not just talk about technology as well, but also in terms of what's the impact of technology on their professional lives, and what difference does it make. Sort of driving this human AI collaboration is where we are trying to differentiate. But it's a journey, and it keeps evolving. So it'll be interesting to see how others play to that as well, and then evolve our messaging.
True. Interesting time that we are actually going through, and I believe next probably 2 to 3 years there won't be any real highlights on talking about, hey, you know what, we our software runs on AI or integrated with AI or it's a part or enabled by AI. AI is going to be yesteryear's electricity. So
Yep,
it's going to be a de facto to any product. That's how people will think product. um, you know
absolutely.
so I think we'll all be wired very soon, especially dealing with software, right, in the SaaS space, where I think the The speed of innovation and delivering that innovation to businesses to create impact is getting faster and probably faster than ever before. And with AI, it is only multiplied.
Yes.
The impact, the visible impact, the realized impact. So the promise is obviously there, and we already see a lot of realized effect. And agentic. There is so much of conversation around agentic now, and there's so many different points of view. We will spare that for our discussion, maybe. But
Sure.
it's a good segue to actually to basically get into our marketing side of discussions. So, Prakash, what is your charter at Pando overall, and what do you manage here currently?
Yeah, essentially, as anybody in going through a startup journey, I think being part of the leadership team, our charter is to ensure that we drive growth, predictable growth year on year. And from that perspective, marketing plays a very strategic role in looking at it from a full funnel perspective as well. So it's both a net new customer acquisition, it's partnering with sales in trying to accelerate sales cycles. It's also partnering with the customer success team in identifying opportunities across expansion. And through the journey, you want to ensure that it's not just you talking about your brand values. You want your customers to talk about it. You want your influencers, your partners, analysts to talk about it. So in both force multiplying brand and driving a brand led growth across channels is the chatter. And from that perspective, it's important that marketing sort of works collaboratively across every function within the organization and
Mm.
have sort of mutual goals that we sort of drive towards.
So, I wanted to understand the GTM side, and for a software company, the major lever for growth is always has been alliance and partnership. And to what extent that is important for Pando, and how is that space looking?
Very critical. I think in my journey, I've seen that do wonders at Ramco, and I'm still in the early stages. We are in terms of building partnerships and alliances, but we are seeing significant relevance throughout the journey. Essentially, if you sort of take a step back, if you do a direct go to market with investing in a huge sales army,
Sales, yeah,
it
field
has
sales,
a field
scale
sales.
issue.
It has a scale issue. It has a ceiling, right? At the end of the day, you will not be able to localize to certain markets that you want to sort of do it. And people like Salesforce, Microsoft were pioneers in this space. They really realized how a partner-led go-to-market strategy is sort of self-scaling in some way or the other. So from that perspective, I think it's very critical to have partnerships and alliances as part of any go-to-market strategy, especially in the enterprise space. It becomes very relevant as well because we are focused on large enterprises, enterprises with at least 1 billion in revenue.
Mhm.
Most of these enterprises for us would be working with consulting majors like PwC, Accenture, KPMG, EY, etc. Most of these enterprises would have clear digital transformation projects with likes of TCS or Infosys or Cognizant, etc. And you sort of how do you partner with these organizations and drive a joint mandate, so that let's say a PwC can do the consulting part of the transformation, but you're partnering with PwC on the technology part of transformation, so that you're building trust and credibility with your customers. And for a startup like Pando, it's very critical to earn that trust, rather than fighting the battle alone. So that becomes very critical. And even if you're a large software firm, you still need extended ecosystem to sort of support you in the go to market journey. So it's a win-win, and the customer is able to see that Pando plus PwC are joined in the hip to sort of help solve for them, rather than them trying to sort of manage them in a siloed way. They may want to bring PwC for a transformation or Accenture for transformation. Rather than that, it's better for both of us to sort of go jointly and say, hey, we both are together, we align with your objectives, and we can both help you together. I think that makes a huge difference.
So, as a still sort of fairly early stage company, do you see building some of these large relationship with these large influencing companies, especially those big four, big five, is kind of a huge task, because obviously it wouldn't be too difficult to imagine how many of those existing startups across categories would be, sort of trying to partner with that. And I'm sure as a brand, that would have taken you some work to build that kind of scaffolding with these pillar companies who have deep access to these customers across different categories, right? Whether it is accounting, whether it is technology, whether it is,
Yep.
I mean, across that, right? So that would have been a challenging task, right? Because
So it
I
is
speak
it
to
is a
a lot
long
of
term.
founders.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Be-
Jerry.
yeah, so basically, when I connect with a lot of founders, I think the first leg of partnership easily, is to think about, hey, whom can I work from a technology angle and become, hub and spoke kind of a thing for create a complete solution, or create an added layer of advantage with certain added functionalities and features, which I think works anyway in that technology space, and it will continue to be there. But on the other hand, really getting some of these large companies, sort of, or sort of building that kind of a relationship with those large companies to create a strong GTM, I think in itself is a validation of the brand and the confidence. And
It
also,
is.
it is a journey, I would imagine, right? I mean, it would have taken, or would take, actually, probably good amount of time for any brands, for that matter, right? Because the speed at which you want to run, obviously not necessarily they run, right? Because they're large companies. And I think we have seen how large companies work anyway.
Absolutely right. So, if you want to take a step back and look at the market, we are talking to large enterprises who, anyway, take long decision cycles to go through a transformation. That's number one. Two, like you said, it is a long term strategy. It cannot be a hit and run with partnerships. You are committed to a go to market with partnerships. Fundamentally starts with the point of view on, hey, what is in it for me? What is in it more for them? Why
Mm,
will a PwC or an Accenture or a Kearney or a TCS want to partner with an organization like Pando? And this is also very true in terms of solution partnerships. For
mm,
example, let me take a step back and reflect on Ramco.
mhm,
We went through an interesting journey of launching a HR tech offering from hire to retire. Went through the PMF discovery, and we realized customers are, sort of appreciating us more on our payroll capabilities. Made the pivot to from a HR tech to just a pure play payroll vendor, and I saw an opportunity. Then we could complement existing vendors who were erstwhile competitors. So we had conversations with Oracle for their HCM platform. We had conversations with Workday. We had conversations with every single HR vendor where whom we had competed erstwhile,
mhm,
and they were absolutely open to it. Now, it took time. Yes, it took about 6 to 9 months for Oracle to come on board or a Workday to come on board. But moment you came on board, it was a very clear, compelling value proposition for everyone, right?
mhm.
They didn't want to build payroll across 100 plus countries. They were very clear, we are focused on HR, right? But you guys understand local compliances and the payroll regulations, and therefore you guys build payroll capabilities. And when we go to the customer and say it's Oracle plus Ramco sort of serving you together, and customer is very happy. So it was a win-win across, whether it was Oracle, whether it was Workday, and suddenly you see uh, a force multiplication in your go-to-market momentum, right? It's no longer you have to wait for leads or opportunities. It's Oracle or Workday bringing you opportunities because they are talking to customers and you are part of the deal that they are working with, right? And the same sort of pans out even in Pando as well, where we speak to a customer, a large enterprise. Let's say they're already working with Carney on driving a larger transformation. Organically, that opportunity sort of brings us together. We sort of discover there is value for both of us working together. We win that customer together, gives us validation, and therefore automatically sort of expands. Hey, we have a great path to sort of driving value together. Now, how do we sort of replicate that in other customers? So I think it's sort of organic, but you're right. It's a long term strategy.
Yeah,
You have to commit to it. It takes
yeah,
time, but moment it starts showing results,
yeah.
it's magic. you will see the
Yes.
force multiplication of it.
Yes, I mean, even if one deal you had, you know, successful deal, it actually makes way for a number of opportunities then in the pipeline to replicate that, you know, sort of best practice, and you know what made the other deal tick. I think it builds a lot of confidence in that go to market.
Confidence.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all about winning
I'm
this
sure
first couple of
you would have
deals.
also seen that, right?
Yeah,
You would have
yeah,
also seen that
absolutely.
with
See,
Adobe or Moengage. Can you also talk about it? Yeah.
yeah, so absolutely. So, for example, you know, if I talk about Adobe, right, itself is a behemoth, you know, in terms of on the digital media business. So, in the digital media business, the go-to-market was pretty unique, and the people that we spoke to there was very different type of decision makers as opposed to the digital experience business. So the digital media business is predominantly the flagship business where they had a monopoly. So interestingly, when I later part of my Adobe career, I spent some time in digital media, and many times we ended up speaking. So education was a big vertical there because you know Adobe, like Microsoft, started very early at a school or college level. They had a portfolio where they could engage students in using, you know, whether it's Photoshop, whether it's PDF, whether it is many other animation tools and other things. Kids would know Adobe. And the idea, the challenge was how do you really get some of these people exposed to the digital experience businesses as well simultaneously? So they work with a lot of educational institutions to give that exposure, bring in early the marketing stack as well, considering there are a lot of these kids would also be interested in digital marketing. So so that was very interesting way to sort of build your future connection with the future group of users. So that's more of a market development side. Obviously on the digital experience where they had a lot of incumbents in the business, they competed literally with Salesforce of the world, you know, Oracle or HubSpot. There's so many players in that space, right? But their focus was largely acquisitions. So they built an entire product portfolio, you know, whether it is analytics, whether it is personalization and optimization category, which is Adobe's target, whether it is web content management software, which is Adobe's you know, Adobe Experience Manager, or Adobe Social, all of that, and then later, you know, acquired Marketo,
Yeah.
and then Campaign. While Campaign was more focused on enterprise marketing automation side, Marketer was more focused on the SMB side. So they built that piece. They acquired Magento, which was a commerce piece. So they built that entire
Commerce.
portfolio. And you know, interestingly, I don't know if you know, that's a good anecdote. Magento was the originally was used as it was the first commerce platform that was originally used by eBay, and it was originated at eBay,
Interesting.
and later they
Interesting.
got separated out and it became an independent unit. It went through a couple of hands and eventually came to Adobe. Some of those interesting history is also very significant, but it's a very powerful and robust platform for enterprise. They did also obviously had the same kind of approach, even despite being working with those four or five global consulting firms, and also worked with a lot of agency partner network. So like the likes of Sapient, the likes of the Publicis Group. So Sapient for more of digital experiences, creating the overall digital transformation, kind of working through that kind of project. And Publicis is more on the creative world, building
Makes sense.
deeper partnership whenever, wherever there are synergies between media and marketing together. So,
Absolutely.
so obviously, because of their size and scale, it was very large, but interesting sort of go-to-market across. And you know, a lot of their, like you mentioned, which is I think is a fundamental to marketing story, is that their customers later become the biggest advocates of, you know, their success stories. So you know, so Adobe actually, I think like many other large companies now have the customers speaking a lot more than they themselves probably speaking about the brand, right? Because the
Exactly.
drumbeat has a ripple effect, right? So it's a community, it's a massive community of where people identify each other as like, okay, we are the same tribe, right? So that's an ideal kind of a
Yes.
place that you want to be as a
That's
brand.
the holy grail. That's a holy
That's
grail
a
for
holy
any
grail,
marketer.
right? That's a holy grail, yeah. So let's switch back a little bit. And I wanted to talk about, so we covered go to market, and I think in a significant depth. What is your primary demand generation strategy in this space?
So, fundamentally, if you look at the context of Pando, we are targeting specific enterprises with revenue greater than 1 billion and from specific industries where we believe we have product market fit. So, this could be automotive, this could be consumer goods, etc., etc. And from that perspective, the TAM is a finite set of about, let's say, 5,000 plus accounts. So anything and everything that we do, we live and die with these accounts. So it's a very clear targeted account based marketing in terms of a go to market strategy, right? Now,
Got it.
given that you
Mhm.
have these accounts, you have to sort of logically map, where do I see my audiences and how do I, whether it is generate demand or capture demand in some form or the other. So obviously, being in the enterprise solution selling, a lot of in-person meetings and relationships are very important in the sales cycle. One of the things that you also want to identify with the enterprise sales cycle is what is called as multi-threading. It's an enterprise buying committee who's sort of making the decision. It's not one person making the decision. So obviously, events sort of becomes a very key channel for us from that perspective, because it sort of helps you build the brand, because your audience are there, and you're putting your brand
And when you
against
talk
the other
about
brands.
events, sorry, when you talk about events, are you referring to trade shows,
Trade shows, conferences, as well as
conferences?
networking dinners that you do or community events that you do.
Okay,
For example,
so
in Pando, we have created a community platform called Crossroads,
okay,
where we sort of bring a set of 10 to 12 supply chain leaders. We have some person of authority whom they revere and they want to sort of connect with, to be like a moderator of the discussion. That drives a lot of value, and there is part to be where you're part of a larger community and you're connecting with your peers, and they say, hey, when is the next Crossroads meeting that's going to happen? That sort of drives us to sort of bring them together again.
interesting. Which
So
in itself
that's
is a, like become a brand, right?
itself is becoming, it's a community brand, and
Correct.
you want to ensure that as a marketer you want to sort of clearly identify the brand values of Crossroads, which is your community brand, different from Pando as a brand, and which is very interesting. But how sort of, let's say, and there are multiple examples, right? I mean, HubSpot pioneered this with the concept of inbound, right? But essentially, anything and everything that happens around inbound is eventually controlled by HubSpot. So, there
Correct.
is always a playbook out there of multiple other brands have done that,
Yeah, I
which is what we are
mean,
trying to
many
sort
of
of do
these
that.
large companies, of course, yeah, we are aware of this flagship sort of either events or a community brand. In Mo Engage, we used to do quite a few of these with startup communities. So we had a program called Startup Accelerator Programs,
Nice.
where we actually wanted to sort of engage and work early in their journey, where they're still figuring out their PMF 0 to 1 and in an experimental and exploration stage. Open up the platform to these people, give up to a certain level of usage completely free, and with a digital support, get them on the platform and get them to explore the platform, use at an early stage to connect and engage with their audience, especially with the
Absolutely.
with a sort of a huge rise of D2C brands. I think that play become very popular. But of course, yeah, I mean, going back to the point, Salesforce having Dreamforce or Adobe is having Summit. It's all about really
Summit.
meeting your group of cream customers, partners, or
Partners.
influencers, and sort of get them to talk about not just about their own success story, but industry issues and the category challenges, and become a thriving community at the end.
Absolutely. And you can pick up a lot of thread that can go back into your product roadmap as well, because
Yep.
you're going to have the community talk through those challenges that they are trying to solve for day in and day out. And also becomes a platform where you can actually see customer advocacy in action.
Mhm.
You are not talking about your brand. Your customer says, hey, we had this problem. Pando is here, why don't you, have you guys spoken to them? and you just kind of like you're doing, you just smile and just sort of nod and say, yeah, happy to help you. So I think events and communities are, coming back to your question, is definitely a critical channel from the context in which we operate,
Demand gen
uh,
perspective. Mhm.
from a demand gen perspective. Uh, and because it's a finite time, you want to ensure that you establish connections with everybody from your ICP, from the accounts. So we use a mix of, you have an outbound led demand gen, but also do some sort of a digital air cover with targeted LinkedIn ads in a true ABM fashion. So, which means you have this LinkedIn campaigns targeting at specific ICPs. You look at engagement, you warm them up, and then you sort of reach out to set up a meeting. Typically, the context is, there is no hard sell. This is what we offer. Do you want to see, or do you have a problem that you want to talk about, etc. Sort of works. They may not be in the market. Then there
Right.
is another motion which you are doing demand capture, where you sort of identify in market audiences and sort of have a very targeted, relevant pitch in
And
trying to
how
sort
do
of
you do
engage
that?
them. That is there.
The demand capture piece. Can you give an
The
example?
demand capture piece today, I think in the last 6 to 8 years, fortunately, you have this intent platforms like Bambura and couple of others who do that. So they may not be 100% right, but at least it gives you demand signals in the market. We use a platform called B2, which sort of juxtaposes the intent vis-a-vis the engagement. So we look at accounts who have looking for a logistics software, or you're looking for a freight management software, but also spending time on our website. They've probably clicked on a LinkedIn ad, they looked at a Google ad, and therefore an intent plus engagement play is a good signal for us to sort of warm them up and reach out to them. So there's a very targeted approach for in market audiences, but there is a nurturing approach that happens for out of market, and probably they are your future customers, and that's where your community play will come. What we also realize is just this will not suffice, because
Mhm.
essentially when you do the first meeting, and this is where data plays a part, right? We went with this approach, had a lot of meetings, and we realized, hey, they are not translating into qualified pipe, because you need to sort of establish the brand or earn the brand trust and credibility there. And that's where you build the brand channels around this entire demand generation. So it becomes a brand led demand growth in some form or the other. That meant we going back and investing, like you mentioned, whether it is partnerships that are relevant from a long term strategy of building the brand, whether it is analysts like Gartner. We took a very conscious call to invest 2 years back, and here where we are, right? Or whether it is media in terms of building the brand voice in the market, all sort of translating and driving the demand from a full funnel perspective, not just solving for the first meeting that you want to do.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly well thought through, intricated, structured kind of approach, and really fantastic to hear that. What kind of role you think the founders had played or playing continuously to sort of on the brand eminence part, right? To top it up, becoming their, the messenger or ambassador or advocate themselves.
Absolutely.
Is there
They're
is that is
very, very important. Sorry to cut you off there. I think they are the voice of the brand as well, right? And I think fundamentally there are two, three perspectives around it. One, the founder having a belief that you have to build the brand in the long run. Brand has to sort of make an impact beyond the product itself, and of course, your product has to sort of stand testimony to the brand promise. That's a given. But having that, investing in the brand will help you force multiply growth. Is very critical. I've been grateful to have founders like that in Pando. I've been grateful in my earlier stint in Ramco, where the CEO believed in marketing led growth, and therefore the brand plays in the overall go to market success. Two, the founder themselves becoming the brand voice is very important. It's not just about your messages, your showing your brand values in action in flesh, with your founder talking about their vision, in your founder talking about how they want to sort of help customers, your founder having conversations with your customers, and seeing that credibility translate in those conversations that the founders are having. I think the founder led branding is a huge amplifier for your brand. And if you have a founder who is able to sort of drive that value. I think it's important that you double dive on that. Three, I think the founder and the media interactions plays a bigger role as you grow. We are just going through that phase where we have getting started on the media and the influencer strategy. But eventually, if you reach a stage where anything happens around logistics disruptions and the media wants to have an industry view, and one of the industry spokesperson is your founder, then you've really made it. Then that
Yeah,
becomes the voice of the market as well. So that's the logical way you can look at how a founder plays an important role for the brand voice as well.
fantastic. So, couple of important point in this juncture I want to bring up. One is, so there is a brand, there is founder, and there are marketing driving a bunch of activities to essentially amplify some of these messages, promises, right? What do you do to ensure as a marketing leader to bring the organization together to deliver on that, to create that experience that you promise as a brand, right? And how important do you
Yeah,
think this is for a marketing leader? I mean, it is why I'm asking this question, because I think many times we have a tendency to work in silos, and
yeah,
marketing
I
being
know
such a cross-functional of marketing truly is not one person's game. Like you said, founder has
it
a
is.
very important role to play. Your sales team many time actually ends up
Absolutely.
playing a marketing role. Your partner is a big marketing arm for you.
Everyone.
Your product team, of course, right? And then your support and all of that, right? So how important it is to sort of ensure that the entire sort of the hands over wherever it happens, all the teams understand ultimately what is our promise as a brand, and how do we make sure that it is realized by our customers, how do we deliver on it, right? That
And
truly is
absolutely.
manifest into a powerful brand.
No, I think I'm glad you asked that question. Unlike a B2C brand, where you have brand ambassadors and driving credibility, or you get off by being part of some major campaign, etc. In an enterprise software cycle, the way I define marketing is, or the customer experience is, the sum total of experiences you had every time you had interacted with anyone and everything around Pando, right? And it's your entire journey, and in that entire journey, marketing is just one part of the journey, right? It's like you said, how was your experience when you had joined the first call, when the sales presented the first pitch deck to you, right? How was your experience when you went through a value discovery session followed by a demo of the solution, right? Or you became a customer, how was the kickoff call by your customer success team? How are the interactions? So every email that you send to the customer is marketing, right? Every time you click on your software and you're trying to get things done, and what it shows there is marketing. So I believe in that concept that marketing is everywhere, right? And everyone has to wear the marketing hat. And sometimes it becomes challenging as well, right?
Yeah,
Because to sort of imbibe that sense of brand and driving that brand experience
accountability
at
and
every
that
touch
yeah.
point. But yeah, the accountability is also mutual, in the sense it sort of proactively drives collaboration. So with sales it becomes easier because then they understand the importance of it in terms of customer driving value. With a lot of the functions, you have to sort of take a step back and explain why we are doing what we are doing. For example,
Mm,
one of the things that we did was to do the entire brand revamp when we moved away from SaaS to an agentic AI, and we said, Pando will be offering AI agents for logistics. We created a brand mascot. We created a lot of messaging around it. What we also did was we proactively partnered with the product organization, and we said, hey, the same brand mascot has to reflect in the product as well. So they are not just seeing pie on the website, they're seeing pie on the software, and the experience, the tonality, the responses, everything is the same. The brand colors are the same. So the experience is unified, right? Unlike, you can show whatever you want from a brand perspective, but when you look at the product, it doesn't resonate, that it doesn't make sense. So I think,
mm,
yes, it is important that you partner with every organization and figure out how, from a marketing perspective, you can deliver the brand experience out
right,
there. I think that
right.
makes a huge difference, JD.
Right. And I think the way, like you mentioned, it is important to enable and activate each of these touch points, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to switch to content now because this is a good segue to
Sure.
content. And it's interesting because I'm glad that each of these stages are interconnected and we are able to sort of build that narrative, at least for our audience, to see that there are so much of nuances involved in every step, right? So content, and we spoke about experience, right? I think we know that today probably 5% of the time, or 5 to 10% of the time, only customers, when they want to meet or see somebody in person, the rest pretty much they want to do self discovery. So even
Yes.
finding information, right, is itself is a part of experience, that okay, you exist and you solve my problem. But as we know, I mean, I keep talking about it, the awareness stage itself, three different stages, right? There are customers of, I mean, not necessarily, I would, so when I say awareness, it's not about the big bang awareness, smaller nuances of awareness, where a little bit of fine tuning can sort of result into a large impact on your business. There are stage, I mean, there is a stage in awareness where, as a customer, you're not even aware of the problem that you may have or the opportunity
Exactly.
that you may have, and that itself requires awareness.
Absolutely.
The second stage could be, well, I know I have a problem, but I don't know who can solve it, right? The third stage could be, I know I have a problem, I know that who can solve it, but how do I go about selecting, because there are so many, sort of players or vendors. How do I actually go about? So I think marketing has an opportunity to obviously, address on the top of the funnel
Absolutely.
all of that, right? And each of these actually have different tactics that would go and play in different kind of assets and content that will actually go and plug in, right? So I just wanted to understand, like, how at Pando, or you as a marketing leader, and you can take example of other organizations as well in your journey, because I know you have quite a diverse experience and multiple companies, successful stints. How are you driving this? What content really plays as a marketing team for you? What are the really high points, and how do you think content actually is an important or not so important kind of piece here?
I think I fundamentally believe it is important and it will continue to stay important. How the content is delivered can change. Like you enumerated it, your content strategy is closely aligned to the buyer decision journey. What happens in a buyer decision journey? First of all, you're confronting yourself with the questions on why should I change? Why do anything right now? I'm happy with my status quo, whether I'm using a software, not using a software. What am I missing out in terms of not changing it? And we marketers are going through it in some way or the other, right? This whole, we talk about AI, we also want to be part of the AI journey within marketing. For example, why do anything with AI, for example, is a good one, right? Okay, now I'm convinced that there is value that a change in the way I'm working will do. How do I go about the change? Is the next question that you need to think about, right? And that means, you need to look at, hey, what tools are out there in the market? How does a specific tool compares with other tool? What is the best way to compare? What is the best way to sort of measure and realize value, so on and so forth, right? And the third stage is why pick a vendor over the other vendor. And in this case, it could be a Ramco or a Pando or an Adobe or a MoEngage, whoever it is. Essentially, if you sort of map your content strategy around this and you sort of look at, hey, what could be the questions that they could be sort of asking at each of these stages, you sort of have a perspective. You may not have answers for everything, but at least you have a perspective around it and offer them as a content. And that content could be at different channels that they want to consume. I mean, 10-15 years back it was just blogs, but now you see plethora of platforms, including conversations like this is content,
Absolutely.
right? So ideally you look at, where they consume content, how they consume content, and sort of answer these questions is typically more relevant. If you can sort of extrapolate it a little bit, and this becomes a choice that you have, is buying a software is just one part of the journey, but the larger KPI that they have is how do they drive transformation for their function and show value, right? So then you look at your ICP and look at what are their KPIs. My KPI as a logistics manager is to reduce cost, is to improve customer service, is to reduce carbon emissions, is to drive better collaboration with my suppliers and ecosystem, etc. and you start building your content strategy around their KPIs, which has
Yep.
contextual relevance to what you do. If I
Yep.
can't do anything in, let's say, a supplier collaboration, no point in building content around it, because eventually you're giving something to them, but you cannot solve for it. I mean, that's a choice that you have to make. But ideally, if you have the point of view where you're putting yourself in your customer's shoes and sort of trying to sort of help educate them, is better. At the end of the day, the way I look at it is marketing is all about educating your buyer. Selling is all about helping your buyer to make the decision. So if you have that
Absolutely.
foundation, then automatically sort of everything falls in place.
So I saw some interesting assets in your resources section at Pando. I think there are a couple of ebooks, and then there's a white paper as well. Obviously, so when you create such assets, obviously there's a lot of effort that goes in. There's a lot of
Yeah.
research and time that is involved, and there is an investment. How do you approach building a good ebook, and what is your decision making strategy? How do you even decide on a topic that, okay, I have 10 different, but this is how I prioritize, and this is how I go about building one?
Yeah, so I think two, three things that helps you there to sort of validate that decisions. Obviously, when you start with, you have a plethora of topics to write about, right? You look at a topic that is resonating with your audience, and the way you do that is you go to events, you talk to your customers, your future customers,
So
and
sorry,
try to
Prakash,
figure out. Yeah,
I just want to add one more point while you answer that.
sure, sure, go ahead. Yeah, yeah,
So you always, like you mentioned, you always have a choice of platform, right? Or a vehicle or a format, right? The
yeah,
same thing, the ebook could have taken shape in a simple blog, or
yeah,
it could have been maybe a video or whatnot, right? Why ebook? I mean, I want marketers to really understand
sure,
this
sure, absolutely.
finer details, right? So do touch upon
No,
on that. Just I thought, before you answer that. Yeah, sorry.
the first question for you is, how do I choose the topic, right?
Correct.
And the way
Correct.
you do that is look at what is sort of running in the minds of your buyers or your customers. If you take an example for us at Pando, last quarter we invested on building everything about tariffs, because that's what's going in the minds of our customers.
Correct.
What's the impact of these tariffs on downstream logistics, and therefore having a point of view was very clear. But we didn't stop at ebook. In fact, we didn't start at ebook. We started at blogs, because the tariff situation was evolving every week, right? In 1 week, I still remember Chinese goods were tariffed at around 145%, and then U-turn around it as well. So we started putting out a point of view around blogs. But we also said, hey, there is a long-term impact of it, right? And people not planning their sourcing strategies right now. How do they look at the next 4 years vis-a-vis the following years, etc.? And I think that required a lot of research and organically led to doing an ebook. We also realized that that's not going to be the end of it as well. Of course, we want to have some industry voice, so we had recorded podcast with PwC, with some of our customers around tariffs, and we are putting it out there. And the idea is to say that this is a perspective or a point of view that Pando has on how it can help you navigate the uncertainty around tariffs. And therefore, it has to pan across different content formats. With the advent of, again, technology for marketers, today you have the
Sure.
ability to repurpose the content as well. So one of the things that we're doing is sort of putting out all this content in a notebook LLM, and saying, hey, here is a 10-minute audio conversation. If you don't have time to read the ebook, why don't you read that and push it out there, right? Or
Perfect.
you use a tool like wizard.ai and make those short videos for LinkedIn, and say you put out a perspective that you believe was very, very compelling, and if you have time, you can go and watch the entire podcast. I think that's the way we are thinking about it, right? Essentially, trying to sort of align your content strategy with what's going in the mind
So
of
what
your
was the
customers.
central master content here? Was it ebook? Was it a podcast where you have like the maximum details that are actually put in, and obviously, like you mentioned, then repurposing it in a different shapes and formats, including the notebook LMPs, which is very interesting use case, obviously. So what was the center
Yeah, so
thing?
the hub was always the ebook, because you had a lot of research go into it. So we took
And how long it
uh,
takes
different
to develop an
industries.
ebook like that?
So it took about a month for us, and we went through multiple versions of it, because the tariff situation was also evolving, and this is a very specific case. wouldn't be for other cases as well. But essentially we realized that every industry has a different impact, so we then said we want to start building industry specific blogs, and we created blogs around it, right? But we also realized that it is important to have the voice of the industry, and we sort of branched out in terms of podcast across different industry perspective. And this itself becomes a collective, a compendium of content that you can sort of repurpose across different formats, which is what we went about doing it.
So, Prakash, how much data plays a role in making certain decisions of this sort, both at a campaign level? In this case, of course, to me, this was more like a moment marketing, and obviously, in terms of making a decision that okay, I have five things that is flagging off, but data shows that the propensity of or the potential impact of choosing as a priority to do this is the most important. Like in this case, obviously, the moment marketing piece, which is tariff, and it's a hot topic globally, impacts everyone. In fact, this morning I was reading about how the key automobile giants in Detroit are going to get impacted because the entire sourcing is put flat 25% tariff for all raw materials. So Tesla doesn't get impacted much, but these guys definitely impacted, the Fords and the GM and the
Yes.
these guys, right? So how much data plays role in your marketing in general?
So if you look at whatever you do in marketing, right, fundamentally you're trying to solve for customer acquisition. You're trying to solve for the full funnel in terms of accelerating in the pipeline, and you're trying to solve for, hey, are there expansion opportunities? So you start with the core before getting lost into the channels that will drive that, right? And look at in terms of data, in terms of how do you take decisions on which marketing initiatives should you invest to sort of debottleneck some of the problems. For example, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we realized was while we were able to drive a lot of meetings through outbound, it did not translate into qualified pipe because one, they were not in market, or we were not talking to the right ICP, or you probably were talking to an account which is not established a product market fit with your solution. Now that intelligence comes from data, and then you decide what is the kind of content that you need to do, what is the kind of campaign that you need to do to nurture that, right? So that from an intervention perspective is only secondary. I think the insights is where it starts, and that's where data comes in, and you need to have the systems in place to sort of discern this data out. And similarly with existing pipeline, similarly with expansion, etc., etc. So if you have that context across, you use data in everything that you do, right? Even if you go or attending an event, for example, the first thing that we do is look at our TAM, and we figure out how many of our potential customers and existing customers are there at the event, and therefore what's your strategy in terms of driving an event success. Then I have separate dinners planned with existing customers to sort of drive the pipeline acceleration while you want to ensure drive as much traffic to your booth. Now that's data, right? Or if you do a LinkedIn campaign, for example, how can you sort of segment your accounts in terms of top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, and therefore what is the messaging that will go to them? Look at what is the messaging impact in the last quarter or the last month, and look at what has worked, what has not worked, and therefore make tweaks into your messaging. Well, that is data, right? Or if you take RevOps perspective and you look at in terms of the account journey across sales pipeline, you look at data in terms of which are the accounts that you sort of closed lost last year because they said they are not in the market, so they are probably looking for a change next year. Can you revisit those accounts this year because you already had an interaction earlier and it's a low hanging fruit, they already know about Pando? Now that
Yeah,
happens because of data. So I think
like
data is
retargeting.
integral for every
Yeah,
decision.
yeah.
Yeah, retargeting perspective, I think data is integral for every decision. Even if you don't have data, build a foundation to capture the data is what I've seen, whether it is Sifi or Ramco or Pando. Data has been integral to every decisions that we do here.
And what kind of marketing stack currently you have, and yeah, what kind of role AI plays? I mean, we cannot escape AI part,
You can't.
definitely.
Yeah. So essentially, what I want to take a step back and say is you need to have sort of a central nervous system in connecting marketing, sales, customer success on a single stack. Essentially, the way you identify your companies, your contacts cannot change because you're using different systems. So that stack for us is HubSpot. All our accounts, all our contacts are uniquely recognized. Whether you're talking to sales, whether you're talking to marketing, you'll see the same identity there. A lot of marketing automation happens on HubSpot. A lot of sales CRM and journeys happens also on HubSpot. But you also have a lot of tools that are integrated with HubSpot to bring a lot more insights and intelligence. For example, we use ABM CDP tool called Bamboo Box or B2, which sort of looks at engagement of these accounts and also brings in external market intelligence in terms of intent, helps us to look at in-market accounts, out-of-market accounts, and how do we sort of drive our ABM strategy. Plus, with the advent of AI, like you said, you have to sort of do experiments there. We are going through the stage where we are doing multiple experiments with different tools. Our creative team is using Midjourney to see how we can sort of drive different images. For demos, we are playing with a tool called Super Demo, which sort of does interactive demos with AI voiceovers. And there are multiple other tools at every area. And I think this is initial stages where the AI models are evolving. For example, one of the things that I played around with is last week was very interesting. ChatGPT had a connector for HubSpot for deep research, and HubSpot probably was the first vendor to do that. So now you can actually connect your ChatGPT instance to your HubSpot instance. And typically, till now, we have been playing around with only web data that is available online. For the first time, you have access to the 98% data that are relevant, which is private data, enterprise data, and you're able to do your prompt engineering around it and try to drive insights from that. That was very interesting. So we are going through the phases where we are trying different AI tools and figuring out ourselves in terms of what is driving value, more like small pilots or proof of concepts. I'll have an answer in terms of what the AI stack is going to look like in 6 months down the line. But it's interesting times and exciting times to see anything and everything that you do can be redefined with an AI tool today.
I'll have to admit that I think this is one of the most exhaustive list that I have heard so far, and clearly
Okay.
it also goes on to show that the progressive marketing teams and leaders are, sort of, in one hand they have a BAU, on the other hand they're always experimenting and figuring out what are the next course of how do I bring efficiency, how do I improve my productivity, how do I get accuracy and more impact through my programs, right? And therefore continuously learning and creating an organizational learning and experimental kind of a culture. And clearly what you mentioned shows that both aspects pretty well. So I'm going to put some of those tools in our show notes so that our viewers can also see that how, as a
Sure.
leader, or a progressive marketing organization, how they think through, right? Now, quickly touching upon how easy or difficult you think building a brand today in 2025, or a global brand probably sitting in India.
Yeah, just before I jump to that question, just to comment on the previous one.
Sure.
It's also two things, right? One, I think technology and AI has always impacted marketing and every other function as well. Even if you're a HR manager, even if you're an IT manager, the roles have evolved. So I think it sort of dawned on me that if you don't evolve, you become disrupted. So we all went through the SaaS wave of adopting different software. We used to do things manually, and I think it's natural that you have to sort of go through the AI wave. On a related note, we are in the business of offering AI agents for logistics, and it is important that we practice what we preach in every other function. So, if you're selling AI agents, it's important that how do I look at AI agents for marketing was very critical mandate for me as well.
That
So I
reminds me, are
think
you also exploring HubSpot agents?
yes and no. I think HubSpot has created something called Copilot within the solutions, and they also have this agent.ai, which I've used. In terms of experiments and pilots, yes, I have tried a couple of agents that Dharmesh keeps talking about every now and then. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're okay, not so great. But I'm also excited about agents that going to come directly from the custom GPTs that you can build on Chat GPT today are very promising as well, because it can evolve over a period of time. It's not a published agent out there. You can sort of customize and build those agents that you want as well. Again, it's the early stages of evolution of AI. We'll have to see, go through the journey was a build versus buy, which we did probably 10 years back with SaaS, and then decide how we want to your tech stack to be on AI.
Honestly, this gives me an opportunity to again connect with you maybe sometime in next 6 to 8 months to really see
Yeah,
what is your AI
that'll
playbook then.
it'll be interesting to reflect then. That's why I'm saying going
Right,
through the early stage
right,
now. Yeah.
right,
So
right.
coming to your
Yeah.
question in terms of how difficult it is to build a brand today, I think it is very difficult. It's not easy. Whether you're in India, whether you're in US, the challenges are pretty much the same in the sense the market is crowded today. It's not one or very few brands. You're competing against 100 different brands. If you look at, I'm sure, transportation management or logistics tech as a category, there are about 300, 400 brands that we compete with in the market. And if you look at siloed logistics tech, it will give you even 1,000 brands. I'm sure Martech is easily about, Scott Brinker is to blame. He keeps publishing more and more. It's crossed about 10,000 stack out there. Having said that, I think fundamentally, if you know who your audience is and channelize your brand strategy to the audience that are relevant to you. In our case, it's the head of logistics. While you can say supply chain is a larger function, which also includes how do you do manufacturing, how do you do distribution, how do you do multiple other roles within supply chain out there. For us, the head of logistics is the ICP there. And if you're okay to sort of focus your brand efforts in trying to solve for your ICP, you're much better. Of course, then what happens is it sort of reduces the larger brand noise to a few competitors, and you still need to evolve to figure out what's your differentiated value for your ICP vis-a-vis the others. I think it starts with having clarity in terms of which category, where do you want to play, what is the problem you're trying to solve for, and within that context build the brand and the brand differentiation. It becomes easy. If you want to go after the larger brand positioning across logistics technology in our case, or it could be marketing technology in your case, or customer experience in your case, it's always going to be tough. I think that's where the play is my perspective.
Agreed. I think it really depends on what stage
Yep.
you are at in your journey. Probably for a new brand, a relatively new brand or a small brand, it makes a lot of sense to build confidence on solving a particular problem or maybe a couple of problems really good, and then bringing that partnership angle and building on top of that, that you go and integrate with someone else and become a more powerful, robust, comprehensive solution. That could also be an approach. But as from a positioning and messaging standpoint, I completely agree with you. I think niche is probably the right way to sort of go about. Thanks for that part. Want to switch now on your hiring strategy, and how does your team look like? Obviously, there's quite a bit of things of breadth and depth that you have currently in your overall charter. Help me understand, how have last 4 years, how do you build your team, and what were the key sort of roles and positions that play or contribute to this overall marketing journey, and what are your criteria when you hire people besides obviously the obvious regular
Sure.
job description, right?
Sure. I'll sort of double click on the brand strategy a little bit because that's also going to help touch upon a couple of things around the hiring strategy. One of the key elements of the brand strategy is how do you figure out the ecosystem talks about you rather than you talking about yourself. And this is a long term strategy, right? And therefore, if you place your ICP in the center, you try to figure out what's the ecosystem that they're talking to. For us, it was very clear. 90% of our target audience listens to Gartner. So it was very clear that we need to have a go to market strategy with Gartner. Eventually the supply chain community are well connected. They're going to respect the voice of another customer. So having investing in customer advocacy and therefore community was very critical for us, right? On a similar note, it's also about how your partners talk about your brand pretty much. So having an outside in view in terms of a brand voice rather than your own brand voice was very critical. Now that meant coming back to the question around building the team, right? And again, the team that I built obviously has evolved depending on the stage of growth we were in. When I joined fresh in Pando, or even earlier with Ramco, I think the mandate was very clear in terms of how do I keep my sellers busy? How do I sort of drive more opportunities? I don't want to see empty time in their calendar was sort of the clear thing. Of course, a lot of investment went in terms of creating those in function, whether it is events, whether it is outbound, whether it is digital marketing and inbound, on building the foundation of it. But as we evolved, the brand functions, having a very strong product marketing function, having a very strong brand function in terms of analyst, influencers, and partners, sort of brings to it. And if you look at the skills that I look for, has not predominantly changed over a period of time, but it's more functional, but also sort of leadership skills that I definitely look for. If you are new into marketing and you want to start your career in marketing, obviously you can join any function. But I think the important skill that I look for is, hey, is there hunger to learn? Do you want to have the ability to figure things out by yourself? Fortunately, we are at a stage where you can figure things out just by asking a question to a chat gpt or a Gemini or a Claude or a Perplexity out here, and you should be able to do that by yourself. And YouTube has humongous amount of videos which you can sort of self learn, right? But the important point there is, are you investing time in building depth of experience within whatever you're doing within that function? So you can start with the content marketer. Are you building depth? You're starting as a field marketer for an events. Are you building depth, right? Or you're starting with media. Are you building depth? But as you grow as a marketer, you want to become an horizontal marketer, because today, I think this is my personal perspective, I think the generalist will win over specialist in the age that we are living today, because of evolution of technology and AI. A lot of specialist roles will become sort of redundant with AI taking over, and we can see some examples of it in our own function today. And today it doesn't take so much time for us to generate 10 different image options for a LinkedIn post today, because I just go to Midjourney and say, this is the prompt we have, this is the brand guidelines, this is the kind of visuals we have. We're able to get that. It used to take a longer time earlier. But then the question is, for a creative designer, is how to use Midjourney as a tool and sort of amplify the time to creative for the marketing team. Content is something, was probably the first candidate. We leverage that as, you don't have to be a logistics domain expert to write about logistics. You can have conversations with Gemini or ChatGPT, understand the concept, use it as a brainstorming buddy, and you're able to sort of build that content, right? So I see an age where a lot of specialist roles will be augmented by AI, but you need to have a generalist viewpoint in terms of how every other marketing channel is sort of driving those brand experience across every touch point, and essentially having a view in terms of how does marketing contribute to business value. At the end of the day, if your role is around driving a unique brand voice, how can you measure brand voice? If you're driving pipeline, is it impacting pipeline? And eventually how it is driving revenue. So ability to articulate the marketing contribution to business value as you grow in your marketing career is very, very critical. I mean, these are the things that I look for essentially. But there could be some intangibles as well, in terms of, do you come with a sense of ownership? Do you come with a sense of accountability? Are you proud of the work you have done, right? Or are you depending on just the teamwork and externalities to sort of drive your success? Those kind of things are very important as well when you choose the right candidate.
Yeah, no, I think I really liked that example. So I was with IBM some time back, and there I served the consulting organization, which is Global Business Services. And the model there we used to follow for talent was T model, which used to be like, so you take one or
Yeah.
two areas really deep at the
Then
beginning
you
of your
are.
career, and then you become horizontal. So I think we have come to a stage where you're right, absolutely, with a lot of these work which were highly technical and specialized work can actually be done now without any one of these skills, be it creating a post for your or an image or a video or whatever, just with a button or some prompt. um, I think the lines are getting blurred, and
Blur.
therefore, marketing will continue to probably flourish as more of the future marketer will be strong generalist, with a broad understanding of
Business.
the business, good understanding of what impacts what in from a tactical perspective,
Absolutely.
ability to read data and convert that into design campaigns and take advantage of that. And AI is not going to be different, because everything is going to be sort of, AI is going to be embedded in everything, right?
Embedded in everything.
So let me, I mean, I think we have covered quite a bit in terms of. So help me understand, and this is one thing that I really want to touch upon, is that how did your career sort of move from one place to another, and you played different roles? And it wouldn't be fair if I don't talk about it, because there are a lot of learning and takeaways from that itself. A lot of business insights today that you're sharing with us is because you've spent time at field, because you have interacted with the customer day in day out, because you've created those bridges between partners and the last mile of the businesses. You also have interacted with the decision makers directly. So talk about a little bit, maybe shortly, your journey from where did you start your career, and how all of these things have happened, and how it actually helped you, some of these roles, to become who you are today.
I really believe in what Steve Jobs calls connecting the dots. Sometimes you don't realize why it happened that way. And fortunately, I've been a cross functional marketer. It's sort of one thing led to another. So I started my journey in SIFI in sales. We were selling internet to home. So it was hardcore B2C sales. You really have to do door to door selling with a bunch of sales guys, and they were very happy with, if you remember, the dial up connections, and you're trying to sort of explain to them, why do you need a 500 kbps connection when you're happy with 64 kbps, and there is no YouTube, there is no video, there is no high bandwidth usage, it's just email usage. And that's how I started my journey. I think looking back, one, definitely the on the field experience in trying to do sales was very humbling. Today, that sort of helped me empathize with the sellers. So, one of the things that I tell myself is marketing's first important role is to enable the sellers to sell better. Right. And if you go and they speak to the customer and the customer says, "Hey, I know Pando, you solve all half the problem." Then I moved to a product management role. And those days you used to have a product management team with an IT team. We used to build a lot of custom business process applications. This is pre SaaS era, right? And anything that I did out there in the market, I realized, hey, a system can do better. I didn't realize that I had this system thinking early on, and I used to give feedback. Hey, I need a tool for our distributors to sort of enter the sales orders out here. I need a tool for this, I need a tool for that. And they said, hey, you're talking so many things out there, why don't you come and build it yourself? So that was a very interesting journey for a couple of years in building a lot of business critical applications, because you interacted with the leadership, and also you interacted with the technology teams. And I come from a non-technology background, so trying to sort of go through learning technology and building, whether it was your CRM, whether it was your revenue recognition systems, whether it was your order management for the teams, whether it was the revenue share team for distributors, it was very important, because then you had a view of the business on how a business is done across functions, and how technology can add value to each functions. I think one of the things that sort of seeded my curiosity to try a lot of technology hands on was during that phase, because as I was exposed to it, that's when our marketing head said, hey, there is this new kid in the block called Google AdWords. We don't understand AdWords. The marketing that we know is, we have our creative agencies, we give a brief, they show us print ads, they use a lot of creatives around it. But this is something new. Can you go figure it out? I said, yes, why not? Right? So that sort of transitioned me to marketing. Did pass out of marketing in my post graduation. It was like connecting the dots. But I realized, having gone through this, the ability for me to sort of have a platform or a tool to look at data driven decisions, and therefore look at a search engine marketing or a search engine optimization with a data driven view, really helped. But also, starting from sales, I was able to look at, how does the messaging will sort of resonate with the customers, and went back to customers. I still remember I used to do a landing page and send it to a customer and say, does this appeal to you? And they're like, okay, what is this? This is a Google Ads campaign. What is Google AdWords? I would explain to them and do that. I think that was an interesting journey. And sort of led to marketing across different functions, from digital marketing to product marketing to events to partnerships and alliances, and sort of consolidating all that under a marketing hood here. I think every function, every role that I've done had built a lot of foundational layers in the way I think and approach. While it is sales, whether it is product management, whether it is digital marketing, whether it is partnerships, alliances, you realize that there is one or two things that sort of shapes your thinking as a marketer. And the more you've done multiple roles, like you said about a T-shaped marketer, you become more horizontal and you're able to sort of synthesize patterns around it, and you look at a long-term perspective of how each of those dots connect the line for you for the organization to grow. I think that's been an interesting journey as well, and I'm still learning. Right, I'm going through the AI marketer phase, so to say, in trying to sort of dabble with different tools and see where it takes. I think having that approach to sort of being curious and trying to stay ignorant and try to learn it all is helped me over the years.
Yeah, maybe closing with that, stay foolish, right?
Yeah,
With
stay foolish, stay hungry.
Yeah, and so I want to go back to that quote you said from Steve Jobs, right? Connecting the dots. You know, so you will only be able to connect the dots when you know where the dots are, right? So it
Yes.
is very important to first identify the dots, and then you will only be able to know by creating those foundational layers, by spending time engaging deeply where you are with that function and your role, and continuously learning. I think all of that very clearly sort of comes out from where, I mean, at least where in your journey, ideal actually for anyone to become and grow as a marketing leader, spending time in cross functional areas. So kudos, Prakash, for that. What do you do to keep yourself updated today?
Oh, like I go back, just stay curious, just keep reading, listening to podcasts, having conversations with people like you. There's definitely a lot to learn, and we'll probably have a follow-up conversations where I can ask the questions from you, Jaideep. I think it's very important. It's also important that you build a community of peers early on in your journey, and have a point of view that you hear from what's happening, what's working, what's not working from others. But today, if you have that mix of do it yourself, try different tools, learn from what's best out there, and those are available as nuggets of wisdom across podcast, across YouTube channels today. And also having a line of connect with your community peers who are currently going through what you're going through, their challenges, and exchanging notes with them keeps you updated on what's happening, and at least you have a perspective around which you want to take your decisions and how you want to move forward.
Is there anything that you do to do peer networking, or um, spending time with, maintaining or building relationships, obviously outside Linkedin has given us a lot of opportunity to sort of connect with each other outside our immediate circle, but is there anything that you do as such?
So being part of some communities has helped me, marketing communities, in being in like-minded discussion groups, just being in touch with the peers that you worked with. I still am in touch with some of the product management folks that I worked with, sellers that I worked with, because they have also evolved on their roles. That's the low-hanging fruit that you have. But just there are multiple podcasts out there. I definitely want to urge your audience to see other episodes of your conversations as well, because each of these conversations you'll probably pick up one or two threads that are relevant in your role, and you figure out how to sort of take that and apply that. Just having that curiosity to sort of learn from others sort of keeps you grounded, JP.
Prakash, anything you do outside marketing to, any hobbies or anything else?
Not much, but essentially, I definitely have a passion for music. Listen to a lot of music across the globe. Of late, I'm trying with the AI videos. I'm trying to see, is there any skill in me in trying to sort of create AI videos. I'm waiting for Google Flow to launch in India. I think it's currently restricted to US. Just trying to sort of give shape for that, but also going through a parenting journey on the personal side. I have twins. I have a boy and a girl, about 10 years. So at this stage, time is the most significant thing, and it's important that I give the time that they need. So going through a lot of those parenting journeys with them as well in parallel.
Fantastic, Prakash. Yeah, and how can people can connect with you, Prakash? What is the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is good. Send me a connect on LinkedIn. Happy to connect as well, right? And happy to have conversations and help you wherever you are. Happy to learn from all of you as well. So it's I always believe that wherever you are, you're still a frog in the well. You're constrained to your experiences and exposure that you had. Talking to people outside of your domain sort of opens up mind, and it has always happened to me in the past. So always happy to sort of learn from everyone.
That clearly shows up, Prakash. I think the entire conversation has been fantastic. We covered quite a bit of ground, and
Hope so.
I think anyone who's listening to and watching this conversation clearly would have a good brand playbook, a demand generation playbook, a go-to-market playbook, and I think technology, martech, also with respect to how to build and orchestrate your own career. It has been really a fantastic conversation, Prakash. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your learning, and your experience with the Marketing Couch viewers. And I'm delighted to have you. And good luck to your future endeavors, and very good luck to Pando as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jaydeep. Really honored to be there. I really appreciate what you're doing. I really wish we had access to listening to marketing peers and leaders when we were sort of growing up in our careers. So, hats off to you and your team on doing this. Really helps us. Obviously, absolutely honored to be part of this. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Prakash.
Thank you.